Hey guys, it's Will. Hopefully, you're having a good day today. Quantum computing is one of the most innovative industries in the world, with what could be one of the biggest booms ahead of the AI revolution we're in. And we're going to cover the top quantum stocks to be watching this week. Some of the top companies we've been paying attention to are really the companies you've probably heard of. We're going to open up the quantum AI watch list. So, we're going to a conference later this week where we're going to be getting some more information on quantum computing. But some of the top companies that are leading quantum could be found here in, I'm going to start with the larger cap. The first one is going to be IBM. They just reported over $1 billion in revenue. They've had this pretty consistent uptrend that they've sold down to the support level around $234 a share and bounced up to 243. You can see overall they've had this pretty consistent uptrend, and right now with the recent sell-off that they've had, IBM has a lot of diversification into other industries. So it's not just quantum, they're in AI, they're in computing, they're in security, IT. And what we're looking at here is, 20% upside into this resistance level. Probably not fully fueled by quantum because while they have over $1 billion in revenue from quantum, it's not something that is driving the majority of their business. But we can kind of go over what's leading to the development of their company. Now, I've gotten to speak with the head of quantum at IBM at CES. I'm also going to this conference this week where I believe IBM, here they are, it's one of the top companies in quantum. It says IBM Quantum is building a large scale fault tolerant quantum computer. And they say by 2029, they're going to deliver this system that accurately runs 100 million gates on 200 logical qubits, unlocking the first viable path to realizing the full power of quantum computing. So not only are they doing quantum computers, they're learning how to basically tie them in a string, or I don't know if it's parallel or if it's in a string, but they're kind of building what are these data centers, but for quantum computers. Now, this could be massive given that quantum computers have been seen to have higher and faster computing power than that of GPUs, but only work right now in tandem with GPUs and CPUs. So it's not like they're going to replace GPUs, at least right now. One of the big issues is storing data related to the problems that the quantum computers solve, and that's going to be held, through GPUs or through CPUs. And another problem there is being able to compress that data and store it, which they have had a lot of issues with the storing of the data, because when you're using quantum computers, you're trying to solve really big problems, whether it's predictive climate projections or massive financial applications that consider millions of variables at once. So the storage of that data is a big deal. Now it says bringing useful quantum computing to the world. IBM is a full stack quantum computing provider. Access to the world's largest fleet of utility scale quantum computers and performant Qiskit software to explore. You can see some of their partners in the quantum space, with the exception of, you could add a lot of universities here. You got USC, University of Chicago, but a lot more universities that aren't mentioned here. I think they said they have over 140 research centers. So they got HSBC is a top partner. Boeing, they're with Bosch, they're with Moderna, which is in drug discovery. And one of the notable research projects they've had with Moderna was related to being able to identify, there's a lot of different ways to find vaccine cures. And up until today, in order to find cures for different diseases, they've had to try with millions of different antibodies or peptide proteins that can bind to be able to find those combinations to be able to find solutions or cures for different diseases. Quantum computers are being seen as the main advantage to be able to solve those problems faster. You can also see they're working with Wells Fargo there as well, probably financially related. Quantum advantage is coming by the end of 2026. You can see sampling problems they're talking about. So the sampling problems have been going down. Expectation values of observables has gone up, and variational problems have also they've been working through those. So you can see some of the focus. They have Qiskit, which is the software for useful quantum computing. You can tap into the cloud and use quantum computers through the cloud. You can see they have some tutorials on Python and building quantum circuits from quantum gates, visualize circuits and analyze results. And they have some partners with Rigetti, IQM, Quantinium, which we're going to be getting some insights on, IONQ. We've been able to meet a lot of the executives and go to some different conferences on these, but most of these companies are still in the early stages. The market's expected to grow to about $3 trillion in the next few years, according to IBM and Microsoft, and they're investing heavily in its development. So you can see some of the focuses here are on quantum computers set for standard for performance and building out new solutions to essentially be the leader in quantum. And they've been doing this for a while. So IBM is definitely going to be there as a kind of slower mover, but potentially a good trade or investment, even long-term, definitely long-term in the quantum market. Right now, the trade is looking like this. They're kind of finding a support here, looking to use this previous resistance as a support. I mean, that's probably what you're seeing from the institutional focus on the couple week to couple month long trades. And that 22% margin for profit is what we're looking at there for IBM. Financials have looked good with IBM. We can also jump in real quick, get an idea of what it's looked like from a market cap perspective. They're at 2.25 billion, so 225 billion, excuse me, and their revenues have steadily held, slowly increasing year over year, up to about $62 billion annually, with a balance sheet about 137 billion in assets. So right now they are trading just a little bit over what could be their fair value. The PE ratio is at 39, and we're looking at potentially they pull back a little bit more, but they historically do trade above their current value. So that's how IBM looks right now. So IBM is one of the top ones. The other one that we have here is going to be at number 4. It's going to be Microsoft. Microsoft has recently reached all-time highs, and with the exception of maybe having a hyper bull trend and continuing, they look a little bit more on the overbought side as of recently. But again, in this conference that we're at, where we're seeing Microsoft being one of the exhibitors for quantum computing this week, they have Azure Quantum, which is their high-performance computing through the cloud. And you can get started with Azure right now. If we click through, it's going to take us to credits they will give us, and also pay as you go. And they have a bunch of quantum computers to tap into through the cloud. We've seen Rigetti there. We've seen IONQ. There's some other smaller companies that they're working with. And then, of course, they have their Majorana chip here, which we're going to be going into at this conference. The other thing about this conference, I think there's a specific focus. It's a IEEE Quantum Week over in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we're going to be watching, because there's one part of their presentations where specifically Microsoft is going to be going over the Majorana chip and how it's used. You see GitHub will be looking there, aware, the quantum circuits. There's somewhere in here, I don't know where it's at, because there's a lot of different tracks to be looking at. They're going to be doing Majorana focus, where they're going to talk about their chip, and we'll get some insights there that probably won't be covered by the media. So that's going to be good to get some insights. We have a focus, so with Microsoft at least, on really making sure that they continue to develop, and they have been. They've got this Majorana chip. You can see, discover how Majorana 1 is carving a new path for quantum computing. They're doing this Quantum Ready program along with some of the companies they're working with. You have, I think, one of the things that people don't realize is this Majorana chip here. Says the progress that they've had. They're working in commercial applications, trillions of operations on million qubits. So they're still scaling. It says the progress validates Microsoft's choice years ago to pursue topological qubit design. It's a high risk, high reward scientific and engineering challenge that is now paying off for them. So they're working to be a quantum leader right now. And you can also see Azure Quantum, which we just kind of pointed out, offers a suite of integrated solutions allowing customers to leverage these leading AI, high-performance computing, and quantum platforms in Azure to advance scientific discovery. So these quantum computers, and you kind of see this is the setup, this is the Majorana chip. In my eyes, we'll get into it, but I think this brings us to an interesting topic, which you can see the quantum computer behind, that this chip could fit in, for example, Rigetti's hardware. So some smaller companies that are working to plug in these chips into their hardware. And that's something I haven't been able to confirm. It's a little bit more speculative, but we'll get into how that's the case, potentially. Now, when it comes to Microsoft, obviously, we're looking at a big company, so the impact financially from, I guess, the quantum market isn't going to be as big on their stock price or anything like that. It did shoot their stock up when they announced the Majorana quantum chip, but overall their revenues come from software, it comes from Windows, it comes from Azure, Microsoft Teams, some of those things, and you see that their revenue has been increasing year over year, and it continues to, with their income statement up to about 281 billion, on track here for 2025. They're actually on track to really explode their revenue, as they are also a company that is highly tied to OpenAI. So they're seeing some increases in revenue, most likely with OpenAI and ChatGPT. So when you look at Microsoft's chart, again, they look a little overbought at the moment. It's possible long term it doesn't matter at all. You just can buy anytime. Shorter term trades, things like that, not really looking like the best short-term trade. When we trade it on the short term, we'll oftentimes trade MSFX. So that's the 2x of Microsoft, which, let's say that previous resistance this week acts as a support here, and we see them bounce and continue this kind of trend that they're trying to shoot up to even all-time highs again. That margin for profit would be about 10 to 20% on MSFX, but doesn't really offer a good margin for profit over on Microsoft. Right now, it's just higher risk than reward for a shorter term trade. That's how it looks. Now, the next quantum company, which is number 3, is going to be Google. Google is working on the Google Willow chip. Last time we were looking for a 23% increase, and that was back in May, and it looks like it did make that move. It just took a lot longer, 23% up to $212. They're also at an all-time high, and they're starting to look a little overbought at the moment. RSI and MACD looking overbought. So maybe not the perfect shorter-term entry, but from a quantum perspective, they've been a little bit involved, or a lot of it involved, in what is the focus for their new chips. They got Google Quantum AI. You can see it here, Quantum AI. They're focused on their Willow chip. This is their quantum chip. They have a paper on it. And here's some of their milestones. They got going beyond classical computers. Quantum error correction is where they're at right now. So one thing that happens is if they send a bunch of data into quantum computer, there's these individual qubits, and each individual qubit has to be optimized. In fact, if it's not optimized, then it can spit out a result that won't be accurate. And so in order to scale, you have to be able to have those qubits highly efficient and high fidelity in order to correct errors and make sure that you can scale and add more qubits. And so they're still in the scaling position right now. They're building a long-lived logical qubit at the moment. Quantum error correction is the next move for them. So this is known as the logical qubit. So again, reducing errors, increasing the number of qubits in a scheme known as quantum error correction. But overall, Google's been slightly less involved in the quantum space. I think it's because they don't really have as much hardware for quantum computing as maybe other companies like IBM or Microsoft, and that's just led to a little bit slower development as they've continued to try and build out their quantum. So right now, a little overbought, probably not seeing much of a revenue impact from quantum, but we still have them there as they're a top big tech company that's probably going to continue to grow in the long term. The next quantum company we want to cover here is going to be number 2, and that's going to be Rigetti. So Rigetti stock, we've been watching Rigetti for a while. It's actually one we started covering back around $1 a share in October. I think it was less than that, actually. We have some long-term positions in Rigetti, no short-term positions active at the moment, and we see them get up into some highs as well. They recently reached this $17 price point. They're trying to hold that $17 support and stair-step their way back up into all-time highs at $18 a share. But the thing with Rigetti, they have their own hardware and their own software, and some of the brilliant minds of Cal Berkeley, because they're there in Berkeley, and this is their quantum computer. And you'll kind of understand what I was saying about the Microsoft QPU. I believe the Microsoft Majorana chip that we were just looking at a moment ago would fit in this here. So I don't know if you guys could see, but this article that we were looking at a minute ago had a breakdown of their Majorana chip. And so when we're looking at Rigetti, this is the Majorana chip, right? On the right, you can see how it looks. Kind of looks pretty cool. This Rigetti quantum computer has a QPU slot. Let's see if we can pull it up right here. And it looks like that QPU slot would fit this Majorana chip from Microsoft. Now we know that they're actually working together. Distribution channels for the Microsoft Azure Quantum Cloud. One of the computers you could tap into through the cloud via Microsoft is going to be Rigetti Quantum. So Rigetti's seen really great technological advancements. They've improved their single qubit gate fidelity, so that error correction potential is on the docket. And also, their 2 qubit gates have increased fidelity. They're up to 99.35%. And Rigetti stock has a really awesome build out of their tech with not so awesome financials yet. Now, their market cap's at 4.8 billion, which is pretty high, but what we see for their income statement is still that they haven't been able to drive revenue. Just about $1 million or so a year, or 12 million in revenue, is not a lot of revenue for a company that's worth about 4.8 billion. So still in scaling. They do see a lot of institutional interest though. One thing I noticed was they had more increased positions from Vanguard and BlackRock and a lot more of big institutions buying into this company ahead of what could be some massive breakthroughs in quantum. And they've also seen their total assets rise to all-time highs. Over the last few years, the most in assets they had was 203 million, and then in 2024, $284 million in assets. But now, just in 2025, in the last quarter, they saw a boost up in assets. Could be government funding, could be their quanta computing investor that put a lot of money in their company, could be some other things. But really what we're seeing is they're at 636 million in total assets, which is a pretty huge bump up into all-time highs for their assets. So that's why we have them there on the list as companies we're going to watch, as they are at a support. RSI MACD on the shorter term looks okay. It looks more like they might bounce that $17 price point or $16 price point. But on the longer term, they're kind of just consolidating. They're going from kind of left to right. You kind of see this level here. They're just kind of consolidating from left to right, trying to break back above that $17 price point, but potentially on a conservative outlook for the medium term could sell back down again. This would be that resistance they're going to face there at about $17 a share that we'd like to see act as a support. could also be the level at which they get rejected down into this overall continued uptrend. But they're up about 16x since the start of the year. So the last one that we'll be really going over into this conference is going to be IONQ. IONQ does trapped ion tech, carbon sequestration. They also work on, they were able to take 20 years worth of research on batteries, condense it down into just 8 options. So it was like millions of data points down to 8 options, and they improved the lithium ion battery by about 70% with their quantum computer. They're working with Air Force Research Laboratory, Los Alamos, NVIDIA, and what have you, but their revenue is still a little bit low. They're making about $20 million a quarter, which is more than most companies, but their net income is negative and they haven't turned a profit. Their balance sheet is also pretty favorable at $1.3 billion, an all-time high in total assets. So they're seeing more institutional buying in. And there's also this bill that they're awaiting, a $2.7 billion quantum initiative to pass that will end up putting some money in the company's assets for them to continue their development for DARPA, for the Department of Defense, and working on their trapped ion technology. Now, IONQ, though, is a little bit of a slower mover as their market cap is large, but they're in a similar situation. Last time we were looking for a 21% bounce on this support up into this all-time high here. So far, they have made about 10% of that swing. They're trying to make their way back up into that $47 price point as of right now, and we'll see if they can continue that trend that they're trying to make. Now, it was a pretty good swing, about 15%. They got another 9% before they faced resistance here at 47. And if they break below about 41, it's going to look a little bit more on the bearish side, because that is where they're trying to hold above in this shorter trend that we see develop here. So you can see the shorter trend, they're trying to hold on their way up to that $47 price point. Which, again, if they break below 41, they're kind of breaking pattern. Potentially they sell back down in that $36, $37 range. But they're going to be at that conference, so we'll be watching there. And we'll be making sure to get, yeah, there they are, IONQ this week, along with AWS, which is another player in quantum to watch. And hopefully you guys enjoyed. If I earned your thumbs up, hit the like button. If you guys want to join us in daily live trading, lifetime access for Stockmates, which is where you can learn how to invest in quantum, AI, space stocks, and what have you, is expiring on September 1st. So if you want to get lifetime access before it becomes a subscription, it's the second link below. We also announced our AI-driven technology for getting all this research that I just did in front of you basically automated. You can have it do it all for you. When I search a stock, I could search any stock like Rigetti, for example, and it's going to go and it's going to look at the charts. It's looking at the financials. It's looking at the news, and it's considering all those things for the projections of where the stock could go in relative time frames. So articles that or financials or reports that impact the next month, you know, there's going to be different articles or financials that impact the next year because of just market sentiment and things like that. And you can see they came out with some analysis here. We have some interesting projections here for Rigetti, and it streamlined all of that via OpenAI and ChatGPT. We can also get the same analysis request, but through Grok, which is what it's doing right now, which is a really exciting AI we just added to there. So if you want it, it's the first link below. I would encourage you to simply take a look, as that is closing soon as well. Thanks so much for tuning in. If I earned your thumbs up, hit the like button, like I said, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.